Hi everyone, this is Natalie Kuebler from Altruistic Ventures, and I'm here to welcome you to the first episode of the Legal Meth Lab series. The series aims to share a number of perspectives within the legal ecosystem to consider our use of methodology and discipline and to provide an honest account of its success or failure in practice to date. Each episode, our collaborators will share their unique perspectives, and this episode will frame the use of methodology and discipline across the ecosystem. I'm joined today by Horia Slușanschi, a Kaizen artist and founder at Novavi. He's also a Lean Six Sigma black belt and holds a PhD in computer science and also works as an agile coach. He's based in Wellington, New Zealand. I'm joined by Professor Camilla Andersen, who is a law professor at the University of WA in Perth. She is passionate about visual law and runs the Comic Contract project at the university. I'm joined by Peter Corner-Walker, who is a manager at Alternative Contracting, also based in Perth, WA. I'm joined by Nicole Bradick, the founder and CEO of Theory and Principle, which is a firm that works with clients globally to create custom web and mobile applications exclusively related to law and justice. She's based in Portland, Maine, in the US. And I'm joined by Jay Dunning, who's a senior manager at DWF Ventures. He is head of creativity and design and works with DWF and its clients to think differently about new solutions to age-old problems. He's based in Manchester in the UK. Welcome, everybody. So I might start off, Horia, by asking you, as someone who spends a lot of time considering how we best leverage knowledge of methodology to solve problems and to find fulfilment in our work, how well do you think that the general population in professional services appreciates what methodology is available to them to help them solve problems and the importance of discipline in addition to this?
Wonderful question. I believe that most of us have a bias towards action. In other words, we want autonomy. We want to do what we feel makes sense. We take great pride in applying our own skills. So there's a natural tendency to resist being told what to do. There's a natural tendency to ignore reading the instructions, so to speak. You just launch in and you want to do stuff. And unfortunately, that comes with some challenge, with some difficulty, because the intention behind methods is not to force people into, you must do it this way because it's the one best way. The intention behind methodology is to actually streamline and help actually achieve great results with less false starts, with less waste, less overburden, less absurdity. So unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what Agile and Lean are all about. You ask 10 people, you get 20 opinions as to what these things are and how they actually work. In simplest terms, I believe it would benefit all of us to have a clearer understanding of what Lean and Agile are all about. First and foremost, they're not different. They have a lot of similarities. They come from different foundations, but at their heart, Lean and Agile ways of thinking are kind of one and the same. The general intention, if you want to think in terms of pillars, they have to do with, first and foremost, delighting customers, because without customer delight, then why bother? You can't have any kind of sustainable business transaction without actually achieving great value flow to your customer. But at the same time, in order to sustain that relationship, the people doing the work in delivering that value, they really need to have a good positivity ratio. They need to have the opportunity to really enjoy what it is that they do. So the challenge is, how do we help people to see that by practicing with discipline some of these Lean and Agile ways of thinking, they can actually help themselves to radically improve on a daily basis how it is that the work gets done.
Nicole, are you finding that there's homogeny in the methodologies that people are educating themselves in and therefore finding it difficult to find people that have capability to blend methodologies well?
I don't find that difficult. We're also not trying to hire lawyers who know these methodologies. So, I'm typically when I'm hiring a designer, not sort of like a legal designer. So I would much rather hire a designer and teach them about the law and the nuances of working with lawyers as users and consumers as users than anything else. So I think the thing that I try to avoid is bringing people on who are truly dogmatic about something. Like, I'll never bring on a design thinker. Like, that's not useful to me. I need somebody who can be flexible and malleable for whatever the circumstances. And, oftentimes, particularly as an agency, we need to think about client budget. And we need to think about things that don't just let us do whatever we want. Like, the book Sprint that a lot of people have read with like the 1 week, 5 day thing. That sounds really cool, but that is not practical for any client who is paying us by the hour. And that will never be practical and will never be anything that we're using. So I think you need some flexibility in understanding sort of what client requirements are and what is enough in order to sort of be pretty sure we're heading in the right direction without completely overdoing it.
Peter, I'm curious, what capabilities are you maintaining at Alternative Contracting? And how are you using methodology and discipline in your work to deliver alternate solutions?
Well, the method is kind of disassembling more than a method at the current. It's about ripping the contract apart and getting out of the frame. Right now, the method these contracts are built on is legal thinking, which is almost incomprehensible when you're actually reading them. I'm not entirely sure what the logic in the way it's organized in. And I try to get it back to a narrative that makes sense. The clauses come in the order they'll happen. You emphasize the ones that are likely to take effect. You highlight problems rather than hide problems so that you're prepared for worst case scenarios. So I guess it's an inversion in some ways of the current way of writing contracts. It's all about highlighting conflict sources and actually emphasizing how the contract will be used rather than worst case scenario consideration.
I have a suggestion. If we see contract as a product, then there's a lot of expertise in product management and product leadership in terms of how do you think about specifying a product. And some of the things that you're describing, Peter, they're kind of lock, stock, and barrel from the product management toolkit, basically understanding who your personas are. In other words, what are the kinds of people that are most interested in the product, the contract, right? And then why do they care about it? What do they want to see? Where do we find them? And then you can actually identify in the process of building the product, which is the contract, you go and meet them and you have conversations with them. So that's something that product management professionals do as a matter of routine. That's their livelihood. So again, in the legal profession, we're very much in luck if only we think about these things, that we don't have to reinvent it from scratch. We can actually draw in some coaching or product management specialists that can help us to kind of repurpose, if you will, those kinds of techniques to the job of putting together impactful and usable contracts.
That is a really interesting point, because part of that equation is we've decided to bring the lawyers rather than be the red tape at the end of the process when you've featured the design and the spec and things. This is what we want to do. And then we get all excited and then we have to pass it to the lawyers and they'll just go and poo-poo it and it goes through a committee and they ruin the whole thing. We've decided to incorporate them in the design process so we can bat some of that out together. So, you're adding that extra layer in at source at the thinking, so they can help and not hinder. So, and that perception's broken down over time.
Horia, we all know that the legal industry is renowned for looking at it to its peers for aspiration and inspiration. What do you think that the legal industry can learn from other sectors?
Well, that's following on from the previous comments very much. We have, fortunately, all sorts of techniques and approaches and ways of thinking and ways of structuring and ordering things that are very useful when applied to the legal profession. As Camilla was saying earlier, right now, the feeling I get is the legal profession is very much in a craftsmanship stage where it comes to method. I don't know that there is a well understood, well appreciated approach to structuring things. There are numerous legal constructs and forums, and different countries and different communities have different approaches to law. But in terms of how do you actually structure work and how do you provide value flow, that's not what the legal profession has been traditionally focused on, and that's where lean and agile practitioners can really help a lot by being available to engage in these kinds of conversations and help legal professionals be very impactful. Because again, as I said, it's not a matter of reinventing the wheel. You can simply learn about these techniques and apply them.
Excellent. Camilla, I know that you'll probably have a perspective on this as well. How are you observing that the study of law is adapting to teach lawyers what methodology exists to help them in their practice?
I am seeing a much greater tendency in legal education today to embrace what we used to call the soft skills, the non-black letter law skills. We are beginning to see a lot more pragmatic training come up, even in the research-led universities. At UWA, we have several different modules that are focused on teaching students, for instance, how to make legal apps. So how to actually program apps that provide legal services. It's a whole unit that you can do in our law degree. We have practice-based placements, and we're now, much to my joy, adding up a unit on legal design, something which never happened a few years ago. So when I say legal design, I'm not thinking traditional design thinking. It's more a question of legal design in a very broad way. So looking at the different ways that law can rethink itself. So I think we're going to have a different label for that, because I heard earlier, I heard someone say with much vehemence that she would never hire a legal design thinker. And I thought, oh, when did that become a bad word? I guess it's what you make of it. So the way that I use it, I just think of somebody who is conscious of the way that processes and not just images are designed in the way that we offer legal services. So just to clarify that. But I'm seeing a very big change. I'm also seeing some apprehension with that change, because law students and lawyers are beginning to think that they need to possess a whole plethora of different skills, when really all they need to do is embrace multidisciplinarity and collaboration with others. If lawyers could learn to play nicely with others, I think we wouldn't be in the state where we are today, where we're so desperate to innovate because we forgot to do it ourselves. We never meant to. We were meant to do it with others.
Jay, you're kind of looking at this from a slightly different lens through working with a firm specifically and with clients of a firm. Can you give us some ideas around how and to what extent you're seeing different methodology and discipline adopted in the delivery of legal service?
Yeah, it ranges. I mean, you sort of, Nicole hit the nail on the head really with it sort of the focus being on the design thinking and the legal design stuff, and multidisciplinary teams. You're seeing a lot of that, and there's sort of a big movement at the minute, especially within the legal area. I think people have dabbled with lean inside firms, but then you sort of hit on it slightly, Nicole, where you get these purists of technology or the methodologies, and these purists don't necessarily or are able to stack up, because when they hit a barrier or affront to the culture of that particular industry or organization, they can't move past that, and they can only see their things away, and they end up hitting loggerheads with each other. So that doesn't really work. You need to have people that have an understanding of their practice and their expertise or their specialism, but be able to adapt it flexibly. And you're seeing that across professional services as we work with clients as well. So yeah, it's good to have, that, a base understanding of design thinking, but it's not just design thinking. I see them, yes, they're methodologies, but they're influences. You will take different component parts, dependent on your problem, dependent on your users, dependent on the outcome that the client's looking to gather. It's almost a toolbox. It's just a giant toolbox. You wouldn't put a hammer to everything in your kitchen, and the same techniques and methodologies in the same light. So, it's a range of different things that would come together. And yeah, multidisciplinary teams is, having people with different backgrounds and skill sets, but it's just the way that people think as well. What we try and lace in there, I'm seeing more in the emergence of, is more lateral thinking techniques. So the methodologies around, design in its sense of the word it's almost a delivery mechanism as we're seeing it, whether it's a sprint or a session or a design project, it doesn't really matter. You're getting from A to B using a series of gates. What we're finding as well is these lateral thinking techniques almost try and break down the way that you conventionally think as a human being. So from a human-centered approach, you will think about a problem based on 4 key things. So if you're faced with a problem today, the first thing you do is look backwards, and you look back past knowledge, training, education, or expertise. They're your only frame of reference in order for you to help you solve this problem. And what we tend to do is we're humans, and we make great decisions. We're great networkers. So what we do is tend to pooling our past to create a bigger frame of reference. So we filter out what we think is relevant as a group, apply it to today's problem, and that determines our future behavior. And our future behavior is anchored by the way we thought and dealt with things in the past. And these lateral thinking techniques is almost a way of trying to break that cycle, stopping that going back, looking back to go forward. And it's the cumulative effect of what is effectively turns out to be just continuous improvement. It's a better version of the way it was done before. So lateral thinking tries to get in that true creativity space, which is the bit I look after, which is around generating something that is both novel, which is, I've never thought of that before, and useful, which is something that they could do something with as a user, as a client, as a human, whatever your problem or frame of reference is. So yeah, you're starting to see some of the old world stuff still emerging, but there is new stuff as well, and it's finding the balance between it and the right sorts of people to use these techniques with. So there's a whole bunch of people issues within this stuff, I think.
Yeah. Nicole, do you think that you see a lot when you're providing solutions to business problems of avoidance when it comes to acceptance and testing of solutions? I think that the influence concept plays a role here as well. And we hear a lot in the industry, people sort of saying things like, oh, we want to avoid kind of including that person for a particular reason because they're a bit tricky. And I think that, that the role that influence plays there gets overlooked a lot. And I wonder if you experience that when you're working with clients.
Yes, I think in line with what Jay is saying, the 2 biggest challenges that we have when we work, particularly with law firm clients. Number 1 is that they call and say, I have an app I want to build. Here's what it's going to do. And the second problem is access to the end user. And I think this is usually not our client is typically like the head of innovation at a law firm. And they're usually, they know enough or they know a lot about, making sure that we're testing these things and building the right solution and solving the right problem. It's the lawyer that owns the client that tends to be the biggest barrier. And it's because there is such a lack of familiarity into software development processes, I think. I think that a lot of these processes seem very foreign. Lawyers, I just did a talk on this the other day. Lawyers, we like to be buttoned up. We like to always portray this air of professionalism at all times. We're afraid to be our authentic selves. And I think as a result, what we get is, I don't want to show anything imperfect. I know what my clients want. I know exactly what they want. I work with them every day. I'm not going to show them something that's imperfect. Let's just go build this thing. And what we end up getting, no matter how much we push against it, we end up with unhappy law firm clients because they're like, oh, well, we put all this money into it, put it out, and now we need to make all these changes. Yeah, that's exactly what we could have avoided. But I think that that sort of senior partner that owns a client is our biggest challenge in building proper products for law firms. And I think part of it, I have a bank of quotes from in-house teams saying, like, we want to see your product. Show us the stuff early. We want to make sure it's as valuable to us as it can be. We try to, impress upon them that this is part of the normal process. Your clients are actually quite used to this typically, particularly if the client is a tech company. They're used to this process. They understand how this works. But it's so foreign to the way that lawyers operate. They're not going to send their client a brief that is, just an outline. They're not going to show a brief to the client until it's fully written and perfect. So
I'd agree with that. The other side of the influence is they're not necessarily going to be, as lawyers, as we work with them every day, not necessarily going to be as interested in the intricacies of the techniques and how they do things when they're in there, because that's the equivalent of them coming to me with their particular area of practice and me then sharing their nuances with the law with me, and I wouldn't be interested in that either, so the other way around. So you've got to balance it with, why is their input required and what level of their input or engagement is needed for this sort of thing to come out the other end. So it's almost an understanding of why around the process, not how or what within the process that we need to underpin. And I would say if they don't engage with the why bit of that, so I'm saying that's Simon Sinek now, but if they don't engage with the sort of why part of that process, then don't bother with them, because they will just poo-poo that entire project. You've got to have people engaged in that. It's the equivalent within creativity or within design, no matter. It's the equivalent of that little boy or little girl in the playground when you was in primary school or middle school or elementary school, taking the ball away and killing the game off, because that is exactly what happens if they're not willing to play ball and engage with the process.
Yeah, I think the reality too for the innovation teams in the firms is that those partners are needed to be champions for the product, to get budget for the project, to do anything. And so if you push them and you lose them as champions, then your project dies.
Well, thank you guys. It's been really valuable to hear each of your unique perspectives on this topic. Over the coming weeks, we'll talk in a lot more detail around particular areas of methodology and discipline, things like how we value the work that we do and measure the work that we do, how we ensure quality is maintained in the work that we do, and how we validate and accept the changes that we make within business. Really looking forward to speaking with you next week. And if any of our listeners are interested in hearing the full conversation, you can contact us and we're happy to share a feature-length version of the recording.